Pierre Campbell, welcome to Counsel Culture.
Hey, what's going on, Eric? Nice to meet you.
I'm so excited to have this conversation. I'm going to jump right in. We introduced you via the introduction to the podcast itself. Talk to us. There is a phrase that a lot of people are hearing, or some letters all jumbled together, DE&I. We're going to have a pretty uncomfortable conversation, something I've actually been wondering about for a while. But talk to me about DE&I and what it is.
That's a great question, and it's been thrusted on us all over the world because of the circumstances in our society and in the society across the world for our understanding people's differences. So diversity, equity, and inclusion is what DE&I stands for. And diversity, equity, inclusion, I do trainings on diversity, equity, inclusion. And those trainings consist of things that are, I always like to say, human relational skills. And it's very important for people to understand human relational skills. That's what diversity, equity, inclusion is about. Yes, it has been thrust onto us and put underneath the subject of DE&I. But when you talk about unconscious bias, we all have unconscious bias. Every single human being is born with that. As soon as we start to think and we start to experience the environment or experience our family, that's what we start to create is unconscious bias, microaggression, allyship. All of these things are a part of DE&I. So it's just a sense of understanding people's differences. There's a quote by Verna Meyer. She says, diversity is being invited to the party. So for example, I invite you to the party, Eric, like come hang out in the basement, come to the party, the basement party. I'm from New York, y'all. And so you come to the party, but then you're just standing there and the music is bumping and we're trying to have some fun. And you just stand there and you're just standing there in the corner by yourself. And you just imagine everybody looking at Eric just standing there by himself. And then bam, one day, at one moment, I walk up to you and I say, hey, Eric, let's dance, man. It's, some people over here. Let's all just dance together. The music is great. That's inclusion. So I've just brought you in diversity, and then inclusion is saying, okay, let's dance. Well, let me hear your input. Let me hear what your perspective is.
So I want to talk about, and you and I didn't address this beforehand, but a previous guest comes to mind, a gentleman that was a squad leader for the St. Louis Police Department. He was an officer. I think he just retired for about 30 years. We talked a little bit about unconscious bias, and I believe we hear that a lot in incidents of race-related violence from police officers to what predominantly, unfortunately, happens to be the Black community. Mm-hmm. I don't want to validate or justify any of it, but we hear that unconscious bias phrase when something happens like the things that we're talking about. How do we get around, particularly with police officers? That's the thing that comes to mind. How do we teach one another that, Pierre, you have an unconscious bias towards me for whatever reason. You have already sort of prejudged me. I have done the same. We just met. We just hit record on the Zoom. Right. How do we start to overcome, again, the policing issue that we had a year plus ago that we continue to have? But just in general, when I walk into a barista or when I walk into a Starbucks and see the barista, you're saying I'm immediately unconsciously biased towards that person for one reason or another. How do we start to overcome that? Is it just simply acknowledging it?
One, that's a great question because I'm actually the leadership coach for the National Police Wives Association. I'm their leadership coach. So the first thing is just to understand that we're all different, regardless of what our race is and who we are. I always tell people that we're all different. We all have different experiences, different backgrounds. Even if my brother and I grew up in the same household, but we have different experiences.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that I always tell people and officers wives is that, people are all going through something. People are all going through something. And what that means is what I'm doing is I'm helping people to understand that to get that level of empathy in order to understand, to get to understanding. Most people don't get to understanding because they don't have empathy for a particular situation, circumstance that someone is going through. I hope that makes sense, Eric.
Yeah.
So for example, me as a Black man, someone say, oh, well, I don't understand why we have to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, because I don't necessarily have to go through it as a white person or as a Hispanic person or whoever it is. And you have to first get an understanding of, wait a minute, we're all working together as a team, or have a certain level of empathy and compassion for other people's plights or other people's that are being marginalized because of their nothing that they can choose. We were all born into this earth. You didn't ask to be white.
Yeah.
I didn't ask to be Black, but I will say, and I'll go deeper on that if you want me to, but I will always tell people in the trainings, I always say, okay, quick question. What's the color of my skin?
Yeah, you're Black.
Oh, guess what? I said, what's the color of my skin? You said, yeah, you're Black.
Wow.
The color of my skin is brown.
Yeah.
And then I will turn around and say, okay, Eric, look at your skin. What's the color of your skin?
Sure, it's white.
It's not.
I got you. I know where you're going.
Exactly. So that kind of gives people a sense of how my coaching and training goes, where I help people to think. It's not just telling people, especially because of the fact that diversity, equity, and inclusion, Eric, has been thrusted on us because of our society. And so when you come back to your question about how do you get police officers to understand that, it's simply to get them to understand that we have all, now listen to my words very carefully, we have all been programmed to believe and see certain things and then make snap judgments. Now, unconscious bias, to be clear, is a shortcut mechanism for safety. That's what it is.
I'm gonna shift gears a little bit, but I want to stay in the realm of DE&I. You and I talked about this a little bit. I didn't get the answer, so I don't know what I'm in for. But some time ago, I was interviewing for a role. It was a VP of sales role. My resume would say I'm qualified for the position. Now, that's not to say the job was mine. I ultimately, as I mentioned to you, one of the first jobs in my career I applied for and did not get the job. But I was midway through the interview process. I had met with the founder. I had met with the president and CEO. I had met with the global vice president of sales on numerous occasions. I had all but started working. I felt like in the interview process, I had gone so deep. Gosh, man, I was basically doing some free consulting for them.
Yeah.
And I asked at one point towards the tail end of the interview process, I said, I've got to ask you as we wrap up, am I your guy? We have had so many conversations. I got to think at this point, whether or not I am the guy. Now, for those that listen and don't know me, 42-year-old white guy. I am, as a friend referred to me recently, the stuffy middle-aged white guy that we all know. And the gentleman that I was interviewing with said, Eric, you're incredibly qualified, but we were really looking for a diversity hire. And when I think, first of all, I was offended by it. Second of all, I did not get the job. And a part of me wonders if it was for no other reason than the color of my skin. And that is as a white guy who has not dealt with this stuff the way you have or others have, I feel like I'm finally starting to see my eyes are being opened in a very different way. But is the idea of DE&I, we're going to go hire women, we're going to go hire Black men, we're going to go hire the Asian population or other religious folk, like, it doesn't mean we're not going to hire the white guy, or does it?
No, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that. It means to level the playing field. That's one. And number two, to bring context to it, it's almost, you have to look at it from the perspective of what does the company want? And for you as an individual or anyone listening to this that has gone through that type of experience, for you to not take it personal based on what they have a need for. It's a business and it's a company and they have a specific need and it's a specific target that they're looking for. For example, if I'm looking for a linebacker, I'm looking for someone, I played football, y'all. I'm looking for someone that is at the least maybe 5'10" and a half. I'm 5'10" and a half. 5'10" and a half, 6'3"-ish, 240, 225 at the least, 220 pounds at the least, 245 pounds. And he has to run a 4.5 40, or if he doesn't run a 4.5 40, he's got to be quick as a cat. Okay? What that is there's a type that you're looking for, and there's a requirement, and there's a reason for that requirement. So from a business perspective, you have to take yourself from emotionally out of it and say, okay, it wasn't me, and it wasn't my skin, and it wasn't like racism against me or reverse racism. So I've heard the term reverse racism against me or things of that nature. It's just a matter of you weren't who they were looking for. Yes, you fit the criteria, but there was someone else that fit the criteria as well. And there was another box that you may not have known about that they revealed to you, which has happened to me, right? It's happened to me as a Black man that I didn't know about. And I just now, as a man, I just have to accept it and also sit back in the reserve and understand that wasn't for me.
So I think as business leaders, if that's the case, and that's a fantastic answer. If that's the case, and it sounds like it probably was, I think we as business leaders have an obligation to more clearly articulate our messaging, right? We're looking for someone with a different vantage point. We're looking with someone that takes a different lens. Monty Moran was the CEO for Chipotle for 12 years. He came on my show. Gosh, he was one of my first guests. And one of the things he talks about in his book, Love is Free, Guac is Extra, is if I want to know what it's like to be a Black man, I got to ask a Black man. And I think one of the best ways, you talked about empathy earlier, one of the best ways for us to empathize with one another is to be genuinely curious. And I have always been very curious. I've never been one to hold back and ask some tough questions. I think one of the things we have found in the world in the last couple of years, that it's becoming more and more acceptable to ask people those tough questions. Because listen, as a 42-year-old white guy, I don't know what it's like to be a middle-aged Black man. There's no way for me to know what it's like. I'll get real controversial for a second. Dave Chappelle talks about in his most recent, very controversial Netflix series, the only way for him to understand what it's like to be a trans woman is to talk to a trans woman and listen to her share her plights, her struggles, her successes, and all of that.
It's so true, Eric. And ultimately, there's nothing controversial about that. It's just a matter of having empathy for others. You see, the goal in life is to understand who you are. And while you start to discover who you are, you also realize that, I don't know about you, but I remember certain things used to bother me. It used to really piss me off. I'm a let's go guy. Like that's people know me for let's go. I say let's go all the time after every post on every social media post. And let's go, everybody, just means let's go. Go means get optimistic. And every leader is always like, let's go, let's go. The boss is always saying, go. They're pointing. And I've always been like, let's go. And there'll be people that used to work with me. And he's like, man, hold on a second. We got to analyze the situation. I'm like, analyze what situation? Let's make this happen. Let's go. like, let's go. Come on. And so that used to irk me in my earlier days in my career. But then I started to study myself. And this is key, Eric. And for all your listeners that are listening, it's very important to do self-discovery and self-exploration, because self-awareness and, Gary Vee talks about how self-awareness is like the highest thing that we need right now. self-awareness. And it's true. Understanding yourself in the process of discovering who you are, and you start to realize, I'm not 100% perfect. And then you start to have an appreciation and realize that other people aren't perfect. And then the next step is to start to realize, wait a minute, I have strengths. Let's go back to football. I play linebacker. I'm not a defensive lineman. Defensive linemen, now they are bigger. They have to block the offensive lineman from me so I can make a tackle, or they have to go around. So they have to be bigger. Their body type has to be different. So what am I saying? The analogy is basically, you have to realize that your strengths help other people in their weaknesses, and my strengths help other people in their weaknesses. And that's how you build a team. And so understanding that whole process of life and realizing that, you know what, there's a lot more to learn than what we think we know. And that's a tough thing to understand.
So you've talked a couple times about a football career. You started, as a lot of kids did, playing football as a young child. You played all the way up through college. You played some arena football. I'm fascinated with athletes and coaches as it relates to leadership in particular. You have a whole business around leadership. You have a passion for leadership. I'm curious, what did you learn on the field, either from coaches or teammates, or just certain behaviors you built as an athlete? What did you learn as an athlete about leadership, and how did those transfer into the business world?
Oh, that's so good. Great question, Eric. I'll ask you a question. You ever been punched in the face?
No, but I've got a very nice Mike Tyson quote in the back of my head right now.
Exactly. Well, I've been punched in the face. I'm from Queens, New York. I grew up in Far Rockaway, Queens, New York. I was born in Brooklyn, of Jamaican descent. And I've been punched in the face. I've been shot at. People tried to stab me. When I got into football, it was my junior year in high school. My freshman year, sophomore year, my best friend was like always trying to get me to play football. I'm like, man, I'm not play football, man. Jamaican, man. He'd be like, man, I'm Trinidadian. You can play. Look at your body. Look at your body. Look at your body. That's what he kept saying. Look at your body. You are a football player. And so I was like, no. So my junior year, I tried out and I made it. And that same friend, and it'll be funny if he listens to this. See, I always tell this story about he on the practice field. I had on all my pads. I was wearing all my pads, and back then they give you issue all the pads, like even butt pad, like it's a little tail pad.
Yeah,
I didn't realize you didn't need it. So anyway, he goes and he hits me, and when he hits me, I was like, oh my God! I said a different word. But I started crying, and I said, and everybody rushed to me and said, what's wrong with you? Are you okay? And I said, no, I'm okay. And they said, okay, next play. And he did it again. He was playing offensive tackle. I was playing linebackers. I don't know, I have a clue about the game, but they put me in to learn the game. And he hit me again. And the coaches came to me and they said, hey, Pierre, guess what? If you don't move, then guess what? You're going to keep getting hit on the ground. He said, what is wrong with you, son? I said, I don't know. I just love it. And I started crying, and I'm crying profusely with tears. And the reason why I was crying is because I found myself in football. And when you talk about leadership, leadership is about you. And so ultimately what football taught me is, and I say this in my new book that's going to come out, it's called My Response is My Responsibility. That's the first principle of simple intelligence. I have a responsibility as a leader to lead myself. And I realized through football, it was my responsibility to do my response, to respond appropriately, meaning move, or I'm just going to keep getting hit, punched in the face, So football taught me to respond appropriately. Football taught me to be a follower, instructions, coachable. Football taught me about life, about chess. Football is not checkers. It's just not moving from here to here. You have to have three steps ahead.
Yeah.
Football allowed me to see that every single individual on the team has a place and they have a reason for being there. And it also helped me to see diversity quicker and easily, when it comes to an organization. So I love football. And I tell people till this day, the only thing that gets me up like football is coaching leaders, coaching executives, coaching managers, coaching students, allowing them to see the best in themselves. That I don't know any other feeling as of yet. God hasn't revealed anything else like that for me.
All right. I want to shift gears for just a second, only out of complete curiosity. Your wife gives you one football game. She says, hey, we got a very busy weekend. You got time for one football game. You got college on Saturday, NFL on Sunday. What team are you watching?
Watching the Giants. Although we're not doing well right now, I'm a Giants fan. I'm watching the Giants. I'm a Giants fan. I can't help it. I mean, like I said, I'm a New Yorker, and I love the Giants, and I understand what it feels like to lose. I've been in this situation before when I was in college, but I'm watching the Giants. I love the Giants.
So as a Cleveland Browns fan, a 42-year-long Cleveland Browns fan, I know you're suffering, my friend.
Oh, man. Yeah,
hey,
we got hard.
I got a question. One of the topics I can't get enough of is this idea of the Great Resignation. We have, since March of 2020, we have found ourselves as individuals, right? Pierre, I've seen a lot of videos from you on LinkedIn. So many, if not all of them, have been the same screen I'm looking at right now. So many of us were on lockdown. So many of us didn't want to leave our homes. So many of us started doing different things. I started a podcast. I'm writing a book. We're all finding ourselves in a new way. And what I'm starting to see, and I'm reading a lot about it, is this Great Resignation is a movement of Pierre has found himself. He no longer wants to do the full-time job. He didn't set out to be a teacher. He fell into being a teacher. Now he wants to go do something completely different. And in an effort for employers to keep their employees, and folks, look at the data, month after month after month, people leaving their jobs is at a new record all-time high. This is not guys like me switching jobs. This is guys like me switching industries after 20 some odd years. So in an effort to keep people where they are, employers are now saying, hey, Pierre, you have been an incredible individual contributor for the last 10 years. We need a new manager. We'd like to put you into this leadership role. And what I believe we're going to see a year from now, if not sooner, is a leadership crisis. And I'll pick on you or pick on myself. Pierre, just because you were a really good individual contributor, either as an accountant or a salesperson or finance or whatever, that does not mean that your skill set transfers to leadership. So I believe we're entering a potential leadership crisis in the workplace. How would you respond to that? But also, how do you prepare employees that aspire to be in leadership roles, but they don't have the skill set?
I believe that we're already there. We've already been there. And it's nothing new.
In the leadership crisis?
The leadership crisis. We've already been there. I think that the only reason why it's going to be highlighted and magnified is because of the way we are society, COVID and having all these opportunities. There are a lot of opportunities that have opened up now because of COVID, because people are like, you know what, I can work remotely. And then the companies are like, you know what, I don't really need these people to come into the job. And so that is already there. To answer your question about how do I help leaders that have been tapped on the shoulder to be promoted, they first have to answer the question. I was asked, why do you want to be a manager of people? Because there's a difference between leadership and management. And I could go into that and talk about that all day.
That's where we're going next.
Okay, all right. But so when an individual contributor is tapped to become a manager, you have to realize that you have to have the desire, not them, not your your leadership is having the desire for you to do it. You have to have it. And the leadership now has to have the competency to be able to see, do you have the skill set, the competency, the desire, the motivation to lead other people? Because the difference is, once you become a manager of people, you are now responsible for other people's performance. And so helping people to understand that that's different from an individual contributor. Individual contributor, you're responsible for your performance. But now as a manager, now you essentially have to put on a hat called coach. You essentially have to put on a hat called mentor. You have to put on a hat called inspirer, strategic thinker. These are different hats that you have to put on that you didn't have to put on because you were only responsible as an individual contributor for your own job. Does that make sense, Eric?
It does. I actually read a post yesterday and I hadn't framed it in quite this context, but she took 2021 as an opportunity to go from a long tenured leadership position back into the individual contributor role. And I'm guessing now that I'm sort of replaying that LinkedIn post in my head, that she wanted to take those hats off and that she wanted to go focus on other things. And that might be a passion project, and that's okay. It is easier to be an individual contributor while you're going to work on a side hustle or while you're working on a passion project or something like that. You talked a minute ago about the differences between leadership and management. I hear those intertwined a lot. Is there a difference? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, there's definitely a difference. And before I jump into that question, I want to tap into another reason why, another reason why people get tapped or people aspire to be a manager. And, people really, really want to make sure we talk about this. You want to make more money.
Yeah, bingo.
Bingo, right? So like if you know that if I get promoted, I'm going to make more money. Yes. So, but it's a part of the leadership's responsibility to make sure that they see something in you, because if they put you now in that role where you're managing people, you're going to cause more problems if you don't have the competency or if you don't have the passion to help other people grow as a leader. And so that's why leadership development is so important. And the higher up people go in organizations, the less you're dependent on their technical skills and the more you're dependent on their soft skills, which unfortunately we call it soft, and I'm doing the air quotes with my fingers for people that can't see me. Soft skills, they're vitally important. They're going back to what I talked about with DEI, is human relational skills. Your ability to have empathy for others and ask questions and pay attention to, John walked in today and he just looks a little off. And just don't ignore the fact that he might have some problems at home, and these are little skills or their awareness that allows you to be a great leader, and your eagerness to educate yourself and to become better as a leader and want to help and promote other people. So the money part is huge. I wanted to make sure I bring that back up because a lot of people that get tapped, they're also thinking, oh man, I can make more money if I become a manager, but it comes with more responsibility. What's that? With great something comes more responsibility. I forgot what it was, like a superhero thing.
I just went to Spider-Man. It's a Spider-Man quote. I just went and saw it last night and I don't remember what it was.
Exactly. With great something comes, with great responsibility comes, or great power. I think it was like
great power
comes more responsibility, something like that. But that's what it is, essentially.
So it's funny you say this because my first management role, I aspired to management because, my family was getting bigger and I needed to make more money. I will say that the first number of years I was in a management or leadership role, I was not given any type of coaching. I didn't have a mentor. There are so many people listening to this podcast right now thinking, wait a minute, I didn't know leadership came with mentors. I didn't know leadership came with coaching. Not everybody gets to hire a person like Pierre. So for those that are saying, all right, my company's not giving me anything, what would you recommend?
One, Eric, that actually ties back into what you were saying earlier when I said to you that this leadership crisis that we're seeing, or that you're saying we're about to see, that's exactly what has already happened. It's only because of the times. It's only like the police brutality or the things that we're seeing now because of these things called phones. It's always been there. It's just the fact that we have technology now and everybody's walking with a phone so people can record it and then put it on a note for the whole world to see it. So this is the whole awareness and the understanding part. So I just want to make sure I make that point right there. Then the other thing is also, all right, one, if you aspire to be a leader, a manager, because you're already a leader. I believe, this is Pierre Campbell, I believe that every single human being is born a leader. You know, like, Pierre, what do you mean? Because the way I define leadership is leading in your area of gifting. If you look at Michael Jackson, Michael Jackson, they asked him, they said, what do you think about music? Michael Jackson said, what? Music? I am music. I presume, I would guess that Michael Jordan would say the same thing. I guess Kobe Bryant, probably LeBron or Pierre would say, I am leadership. Yeah, you're daggone right. I am leadership. I don't have to think about it. That's who I am. That's who I am. And what every individual is supposed to do is to take a little time, as much time as we spent on education, to also study yourself and discover what your leadership is. Going back to Pierre Campbell definition, your area of gifting, because that's what you're supposed to be doing on the job. And that's what's going to give you significance on the job. So when you ask, what should these people do that can't afford a coach, an executive coach or leadership coach like me, is one, get virtual mentors. I'm a virtual mentor to a lot of people. What does that mean? I'm one of my virtual mentors is Dr. Miles Monroe. Another one, John Maxwell, Bob Proctor, Earl Nightingale. You know, I can go on and on and on. Why? Because I study these people. I study what their content is saying. I read, look at all those books behind you.
Yep.
Read books. And also, do you have a car? If you have a car, that means you found the value and you needed it, so you paid for it. The same thing with coaching. The minute you decide and you realize that I need this coaching, then you'll pay for it. And I think that that's what's so important for people to understand, especially in leadership management roles. I believe every manager should have a coach, and every manager needs to understand how to coach. That's another thing I coach managers on.
As we start to wrap the show, my favorite question, in fact, the one I get the most feedback on, is the final question. I want to ask here in a minute where people can find you, but the final question I'll ask you, you do a lot of keynote addresses, you've written books, you've done an awful lot of podcasts and other forms of media. You answer a lot of questions about leadership. You answer a lot of questions about diversity, equity, and inclusion. What's one question that you are not asked that you wish people would ask you?
That's a great question. And that one question would be, how did you do it? How did you do what, Pierre? How did you overcome the failures, the amount of failures that you had in college? How do you have such an optimistic, how do you know what you know? People don't, that question has never been asked.
So talk to me. Actually, let's take a step back. If you're open to it, what are some of those failures in college?
So I graduated from Cheney University of Pennsylvania, the first historical Black university in the United States of America. Great history for everyone to know, regardless of your race, background, or culture. Founded in 1837. I walked on at Cheney University. I was not recruited out of high school. I only played 2 years. And when I got there, went to financial aid, did financial aid. That was paper back in the day. It wasn't computers, y'all. So went to financial aid, and I'm in the financial aid office, and my mom is with me, my dad is with me, and my uncle's with me. And it's literally like yesterday. And the financial aid is like, oh, unfortunately, sorry to tell you, you're not going to be able to come to school because you don't have enough money. And that's the story of a lot of people's lives. And my mom went in her brassiere and pulled out $1,000 cash.
Wow.
Which my father didn't know, my uncle didn't know, I didn't know that she had it. And she dropped that bad boy on the table and said, my son is not coming back to New York. Please let me know what is this going to help? And of course, financial aid lady was like, can you talk about 1994, y'all? 1994. She was like, oh, well, let me see here. She counted that bad boy out and she said, okay, we're going to work it out. Don't worry, we'll figure out something. Mind you, I'm walking on to the football team and all this kind of stuff. That showed me that you got to have a plan. And you got to realize that, you know what? It's going to be all right. So I go and I played 5 years of college football, Eric, 5 years, and one college football game. I am extremely optimistic. I wrote the book on optimism. Simple Intelligence is literally about having an optimistic, shifting your paradigm, having an optimistic mindset. And people never ask me, how did I do it? So let me tell you how I did it.
Please.
I programmed myself. I literally programmed myself. I literally listened to only positive things. I wouldn't even watch horror movies, Eric.
Wow.
You know, your friends watching horror and all that kind of stuff. No. I was determined not to watch what I didn't want to go into my subconscious mind. I didn't even know the word subconscious mind when I was in college. I knew that in order to be successful playing ball, that I had to study. And so I studied film. I programmed myself to be good at linebacker. I studied film. I'm trying to everybody doesn't know what film means. It's just watching video of yourself and video of your teammates.
Yeah.
Video of your opponent. And so I programmed myself. And what I learned in that process of failing and, you know, going out and playing games and losing, there was something inside of me, Eric, that never shifted. And that one thing was my ability to be optimistic. Not Pollyanna, Eric. Pollyanna is totally different. Pollyanna, oh, it's going to be all right. It's going to be okay. Yeah. No, hell no. Trust me, I've been shot at. I've been close to death multiple times. So I know what it looks like and I know when it's coming, how to prepare myself. Okay. What I'm saying is there is something uniquely different that I discovered about myself that allows me to be confident in knowing what I know and speaking and helping people. And that is because of programming. And so I say it all the time, Eric, guard your gates. I tell people to guard their gates. And it came from me discovering this in college, but I never answered it to this depth. When I say guard your gates, guard what you listen to, because what you listen to consistently goes into your subconscious mind. Guard what you watch, because what you watch consistently goes into your subconscious mind. Guard what you speak, because the words that you speak, even if it's negative words, it has a way of going back. Regardless of your faith or what you believe, it's just laws, simple laws that are out there that's proven. Ask any successful person. And so I said, but daggone it, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to program myself to be a winner. I'm going to program myself to be a professional. And that's what I did. And I encourage every human being to do the same thing, because if you don't program yourself, you are going to be programmed. We are naturally inundated, and this is what creates the biases that we have to this day. Good or bad, it's programming. But the true control and the true power that we all want as human beings, Eric, the true power is in having power over yourself, control over yourself. And there's no more control than controlling your program.
All right, I'm going to ask everybody, because I know what I'm going to do when we wrap up. I'm going to go listen to that last 4 minutes, because that to me was the most powerful part of the conversation. So I'm going to challenge everybody right now, go back like 4 minutes and listen to that all over again. And I'm going to dumb it down for guys like me that need it dumbed down. For those of you that are in sales, your boss or you have said this about your CRM: garbage in, garbage out. Yeah. I'm gonna dumb it down to that. The crap that you put in, the shit that you're listening to is the shit that you're gonna say. The stuff that you're watching is the stuff that you like. Our mindset. It's funny that you say that. And we'll end it with this. I started reading. I've shared this before. I got one book. In fact, I'm going to interview Kara Golden later this afternoon. Kara was the founder and CEO of Hint, the water company. I'm 42. I went 40 years without reading a book that I wasn't required to read. If my wife didn't say, I need you to read this, we got to read this together. I had an old boss who made me read some books. Obviously, as a child, I was forced into reading books. And I'm telling you, I am a different person. I read a book a week. I've basically stopped watching TV. I'm embarrassed to say this. I don't listen to podcasts. I fill my life with reading books and writing a book. And I'm telling you, I am a different person now than I was just 2 years ago. And I didn't, up until maybe 6 months ago, I didn't intentionally make that decision. I started a podcast. I interviewed somebody. I got to be prepared. I got to read the book. And what I have found is I am exponentially a different person than I was. So Pierre, an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I enjoyed talking about leadership. I really enjoyed, although I didn't expect us to go quite that deep, the DE&I conversation. So thank you for your time. You and I connected on LinkedIn, which is how we first met, I think about 1.5 years ago. Where can people find you? You've written a book, you're writing a book. Where can people find that?
Oh, great. Thanks, Eric. First of all, I want to tell you, keep doing this. Keep programming yourself, keep making this content for people, because people need this type of content. You are essentially someone's virtual mentor. You are opening the minds of other people as they actually listen to you or watch you as you grow. They're seeing themselves in you, and you're allowing them to you're asking questions that is allowing them to learn. And there's nothing better than that, because that's what you're doing. And I love the fact that you started this podcast, and I'm so grateful to be a guest. People can find me at pierrecamp.com. That's my website, pierrecamp.com. And connect with me on LinkedIn, everyone. I post a lot of content there on leadership and management. I love it. I don't know any other thing like getting punched in the face or punching somebody in the face, playing ball, that I can do, that allows me to exert this controlled, there's a thing in professional football, it's controlled aggression, or this ability to give what's inside of me. The football was the only thing that I discovered back then. So yeah, that's where you can find me, pierrecamp.com, and connect with me on LinkedIn, everyone. And thank you so much for having me on your show.
Pierre, thank you so much. Have a great week.
You too. Let's go.